The halls of Oakwood High School buzzed with typical teenage energy. Groups huddled around lockers discussing weekend plans, sporting events, and the latest viral videos. But among them, 17-year-old Priya stood out like a quiet island in a stormy sea. Not because she tried to. In fact, she would have preferred to blend in. But because there was something undeniably different about her. As other teens scrolled through social media during lunch breaks, Priya's fingers traced equations in worn notebooks. While classmates debated music and movies, her mind wandered through abstract mathematical landscapes that few adults, let alone teenagers, could navigate. "Hey, math girl, did you do the homework?" called out Liam, sliding into the seat across from her in the cafeteria. Priya looked up, momentarily pulled from her thoughts. "Yeah," she replied with a small smile, pushing her half-eaten sandwich aside. It didn't take long. That was an understatement. The advanced calculus homework that had most seniors panicking had taken Priya less than 15 minutes. The rest of her evening had been spent exploring a mathematical puzzle she'd discovered online, something about prime number patterns that had caught her interest. At home, things weren't much different. The modest two-bedroom house on the outskirts of town wasn't filled with sophisticated academic discussion. Her father, Raj, worked long hours as an electrician, coming home with hands calloused from honest work. Her mother, Nita, balanced shifts as a hospital nurse with keeping their household running. Neither parent had gone to college. Both had immigrated to America with dreams of giving their daughter opportunities they never had. What they hadn't expected was raising a child whose mind seemed to operate on an entirely different level. "I don't understand half of what she talks about sometimes," Raj confessed one evening to his wife as they watched Priya scribbling in notebooks at the kitchen table, oblivious to the world around her. "But I've never seen anyone love learning the way she does." Nita nodded, gazing at their daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. "I just worry that she's missing out on being a teenager." But Priya wasn't missing out, at least not in her mind. While she didn't have many friends, she had found something far more valuable: purpose. Each equation she solved, each problem she tackled, felt like unlocking another door in an endless mansion of knowledge. The turning point came on a Tuesday in late October. Mr. Chen, the calculus teacher, handed back tests to the class. When he reached Priya, he paused. "See me after class," he said quietly before moving on. Priya's stomach tightened. Had she made a mistake? She rarely did on tests, but there was always the possibility. When the bell rang and the classroom emptied, she approached his desk with apprehension. "Is something wrong with my test?" Mr. Chen looked up from organizing papers. His expression wasn't stern but curious, almost excited. "No, nothing's wrong." "That's what's remarkable." He pulled out her test and flipped to the last page. "This bonus question. It was designed to be unsolvable with the methods I've taught in class. It would require advanced techniques from upper-level college courses." Priya looked at the question she'd answered. "Oh, I just thought it looked interesting. But that's not all." He pointed to the margins of her paper filled with tiny notations. "These alternative solutions you worked out, they show approaches I've never seen someone your age even attempt." "Where did you learn this?" She shrugged slightly. "I didn't really learn it anywhere. I just tried different ways until it made sense." Mr. Chen leaned back in his chair, studying her with newfound awareness. "Have you ever considered where this talent might take you?" Truthfully, she hadn't. Math had always been her private joy, a secret garden where everything made sense when the real world often didn't. The idea that it could lead somewhere hadn't fully formed in her mind. 2 days later, Mr. Chen introduced Priya to Dr. Eleanor Walsh via video call. Dr. Walsh, a retired mathematics professor from the State University, had steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Chen tells me you have quite a gift," she said, adjusting her glasses as she examined some of Priya's work that had been sent ahead. "I just like solving problems," Priya responded, suddenly self-conscious under this expert's gaze. "Well, that's where all good mathematics begins," Dr. Walsh smiled. "Would you be interested in working with me? Remotely at first, perhaps meeting occasionally when your parents can drive you to campus." That first conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. For the first time, Priya found herself talking to someone who not only understood the language of mathematics she spoke, but could challenge her, push her further. When they finally hung up, she sat in stunned silence, a door to a new world having just opened before her. Parents were cautiously supportive when she told them about Dr. Walsh's offer to mentor her. "You should meet this professor in person first," her father insisted. Protective instincts kicking in. Make sure everything is above board. The following weekend, they made the 2-hour drive to the university where Dr. Walsh maintained an office despite her retirement. The professor greeted them warmly, explaining to Priya's bewildered parents what made their daughter exceptional. "In 30 years of teaching mathematics, I've encountered perhaps 3 students with this level of intuitive understanding," she told them. "Your daughter sees patterns and connections that others miss. With the right guidance, there's no telling what she might achieve." Her parents exchanged glances, a mixture of pride and something like fear passing between them. Their daughter was heading somewhere they couldn't follow. "We want what's best for Priya," her mother said finally. "If you think you can help her grow this gift, then we support it," and so began Priya's real education. Twice-weekly video sessions with Dr. Walsh expanded to daily emails and shared digital workspaces where they could collaborate on problems. The retired professor sent books that weren't on any high school curriculum. Advanced texts on number theory, abstract algebra, and theoretical physics. On weekends, when other teenagers were going to movies or hanging out at the mall, Priya often sat at her small desk by the window, losing herself in mathematical worlds. Her room gradually transformed, walls, once bare, now covered with papers filled with equations, and diagrams that would look like incomprehensible scribbles to anyone else but represented beautiful clarity to her. Her few friends drifted further away, unable to relate to her increasingly specialized interests. Even her parents, though supportive, found themselves standing on the shores of an ocean. Their daughter was sailing alone. "I'm worried she's becoming too isolated," her mother confessed to Dr. Walsh during a check-in call 3 months into the mentorship. "Intelligence like hers can be isolating," Dr. Walsh acknowledged, "but she's finding her people. They just happen to be spread across time and space. When she reads Ramanujan or Gauss, she's connecting with minds like her own." The sacrifice of normal teenage experiences didn't feel like a sacrifice to Priya. Each new concept mastered brought a rush of satisfaction nothing else could match. Under Dr. Walsh's guidance, she began to see mathematics not as a school subject, but as a vast, intricate tapestry connecting everything in existence. One evening, as winter settled over their small town, Dr. Walsh sent Priya an email different from their usual communications. It contained a single link to a paper describing what mathematicians called the Riemann-Hodge conjecture. "I think you're ready for this," the professor wrote. "Don't be discouraged if it seems impossible at first. Some of the greatest minds in the field have tried to solve this for decades. I just want you to start thinking about it." Little did either of them know that this casual introduction would change not only Priya's life, but potentially the course of modern mathematics itself. As snow fell silently outside her window, Priya clicked the link, unaware she was taking the first step on an extraordinary journey that would eventually stun the scientific world. The Riemann-Hodge conjecture wasn't just any mathematical problem. It was a monster that had swallowed careers whole, a siren that had lured brilliant minds into years of fruitless labor. For 37 years, it had stood as one of the most tantalizing, unsolved questions in modern mathematics. Beautiful in its statement, devastating in its complexity. Priya first encountered it on a winter evening, when snow piled against her bedroom window and the house creaked with cold. She'd opened the link Dr. Walsh sent her expecting something interesting but manageable. Instead, she found herself staring at what looked like an alien language. Dense notation, references to concepts she'd never heard of, implications she couldn't begin to grasp. "I don't understand any of this," she admitted during their next video call, feeling a rare sense of defeat. Dr. Walsh's face crinkled into a smile. "I would have been shocked if you did. This problem connects several advanced areas of mathematics: number theory, topology, and quantum algebra. Most mathematicians spend years building up the background knowledge even to approach it. Then why show it to me?" Priya asked, confused. "Because," Dr. Walsh leaned closer to the camera, "sometimes the fresh eyes of someone who doesn't know what's impossible can see what the experts miss. And you, my dear, have the most remarkable pair of fresh eyes I've encountered in decades." Over the next month, Priya's education took a sharp turn. Under Dr. Walsh's guidance, she dove into the prerequisite knowledge needed to even understand the conjecture. Her bedroom became a miniature library with books stacked on every surface. Her parents tiptoed past her door late at night, exchanging worried glances at the light still shining beneath it. "You need sleep too," her mother would say, poking her head in to find Priya surrounded by papers, eyes red-rimmed but alert. "Just a little longer," was always the reply. The problem itself was deceptively simple to state. It proposed a relationship between certain mathematical structures that, if proven true, would bridge the gap between two seemingly separate branches of mathematics. The implications reached beyond pure theory. Cryptography, quantum computing, even fundamental physics would be affected by its resolution. "Think of it as a missing puzzle piece," Dr. Walsh explained one day. "We have these beautiful mathematical structures on either side, and this conjecture suggests they're actually part of the same picture. If someone could prove that connection exists, it would be like discovering a new continent on the mathematical map." What fascinated Priya most was learning about the legion of brilliant minds who had tried and failed to solve it. Professor Hiroshi Takahashi at Tokyo University had devoted 15 years to the problem before admitting defeat. The legendary Dr. Abigail Cohen had come close in 2018, finding a partial solution that excited the mathematical community before a fatal flaw was discovered in her approach. Even the celebrated genius Thomas Weisskopf, with 3 Fields Medals to his name, had proclaimed the problem likely unsolvable in our lifetime after his own 4-year attempt yielded nothing. "Why does everyone attack it the same way?" Priya asked one evening after reading through yet another failed approach. "How do you mean?" Dr. Walsh looked intrigued. "Well, all these papers start from the Riemann side of things. They try to build bridges from there to the Hodge structures. But what if that's backward? What if we should be starting from the other direction?" Dr. Walsh's eyebrows rose slightly. "An interesting observation. Many have tried both directions, but perhaps not with the right perspective. Keep thinking along those lines." As winter gave way to spring, Priya's understanding deepened. She began to see the conjecture not as an impenetrable wall but as a door with a complex lock, one that might open if approached with the right combination of insights. Her high school homework became an afterthought, completed hastily between sessions of real work on the conjecture. Her parents noticed the change in her. At dinner, she was physically present but mentally elsewhere, occasionally mumbling numbers or strange terms under her breath. Her father worried she was pushing herself too hard. Her mother wondered if they should insist on more balance. "I've never seen her so alive," her father said one night as they watched her sketching equations while supposedly watching TV with them. "It's like she's found her purpose." Her mother nodded slowly. "I just hope she remembers to live in the real world too." The real world, however, held less and less interest for Priya. Each day at school became an exercise in patience, sitting through classes that seemed trivial compared to the intellectual heights she scaled each evening. Only her weekly dinner with Dr. Walsh, when the professor drove to their town to work with her in person, offered real human connection around her passion. During one such dinner in a quiet corner of a local restaurant, Dr. Walsh asked an unexpected question. "Do you know why I believe you might succeed where others have failed?" Priya looked up from her notebook, surprised. "Because I'm stubborn?" The older woman laughed. "That helps, certainly. But mainly it's because you're an outsider in multiple ways. You haven't been trained in the traditional academic system with all its assumptions about what approaches are correct. You're young enough that your brain makes connections mine can't anymore. And you don't have decades of reputation resting on how you tackle this problem." Priya considered this. "You make being untrained sound like an advantage." Sometimes it is. The history of science is filled with breakthroughs that came from people who didn't know they were supposed to fail. Dr. Walsh took a sip of her tea. "Did you know that Einstein developed relativity while working as a patent clerk? Or that Ramanujan, perhaps the most intuitive mathematical genius who ever lived, had almost no formal training?" This conversation stayed with Priya as spring bloomed into summer. While classmates celebrated the approach of vacation with parties and plans, she mapped out her own summer project, a systematic attack on the conjecture. Her parents, concerned about the intensity of her focus, insisted on some boundaries. She reluctantly agreed to take Sunday afternoons off, to spend time with family, to sleep at least 6 hours each night. These concessions felt like unwelcome interruptions to her work, but she complied to keep peace at home. On the first day of summer break, Priya established her war room. The family's dining table, cleared of its usual clutter, became her command center. With her parents' blessing, she covered the walls of the rarely used dining room with whiteboards purchased from a school surplus sale. Her father installed additional lighting so she could work without straining her eyes. "Just promise you'll eat meals with us," her mother said, surveying the transformation of their dining room into a mathematical laboratory. "And come outside occasionally to remember the sun exists." Priya nodded absently, already lost in calculation. Days blurred into weeks. July brought sweltering heat that made the rest of the world move in slow motion, while Priya's mind raced ahead. She established a rhythm: mornings for studying background material, afternoons for attempting new approaches, evenings for reviewing the day's work with Dr. Walsh via video call. The breakthrough didn't come all at once. Instead, it accumulated like water behind a dam. Small insights, tiny shifts in perspective, moments of clarity in the shower or while falling asleep. She began keeping a voice recorder by her bed to capture middle-of-the-night revelations. "I think I've found a way to reframe the entire problem," she told Dr. Walsh on a humid August evening. "What if we look at it as a manifestation of symmetry breaking? The mathematics gets much cleaner." Dr. Walsh's expression was cautious but interested. "Show me." Over the next hour, Priya walked through her approach. It wasn't a solution yet, not even close, but it was a novel perspective that simplified some of the conjecture's most obstinate aspects. "This is genuinely innovative," Dr. Walsh said finally. "I've never seen the problem framed quite this way. Is it worth pursuing?" "Absolutely. But prepare yourself for a long journey. Even with this insight, we're talking about months or years of work." Priya nodded, undaunted. Time was the one resource she had in abundance. As summer waned and the new school year approached, she felt a mounting frustration. Being a senior would bring college applications, standardized tests, and other distractions from what now felt like her life's work. Over breakfast 3 days before school was to begin, she broached the subject with her parents. "I've been thinking about taking the equivalency exam instead of going back to school," she said, eyes fixed on her cereal to avoid seeing their reactions. "I could finish high school requirements in a couple of months and focus on my research." The silence that followed was heavy. When she finally looked up, she saw her parents exchanging one of their wordless communications. A marriage of 20 years had given them an almost telepathic ability to consult each other. "We want you to be happy," her mother began carefully, "and we know how important this work is to you. But," her father continued, "we also believe there's value in completing things properly. One more year of school won't derail your research, and it might give you experiences and perspectives you'll value later." They reached a compromise. Priya would return to school but take a reduced course load, only the classes necessary for graduation. The school principal, after a meeting with Dr. Walsh, who explained the exceptional nature of Priya's extracurricular research, approved this unusual arrangement. And so Priya entered her senior year living a double life: ordinary student by morning, mathematical revolutionary by afternoon and evening. Her classmates noticed her growing distraction, the way she sometimes scribbled in notebooks during lunch instead of socializing, but few understood what occupied her mind. "She's just trying to get into some fancy college," was the common assumption. If they had known she was attempting what renowned professors considered impossible, that she woke each morning with complex equations swirling through her mind like most teenagers had song lyrics, they might have viewed her differently. But Priya kept her work private, sharing it only with Dr. Walsh and, in simplified terms, with her increasingly supportive parents. October arrived with falling leaves and the first real test of her approach to the conjecture. After 2 months of intensive work, she hit a significant obstacle. A proof that seemed promising collapsed under closer examination, revealing a fundamental flaw in her reasoning. "I was wrong," she told Dr. Walsh flatly during their weekly dinner. "The symmetry-breaking approach doesn't hold at the quantum level. I've wasted months." Dr. Walsh calmly buttered a dinner roll. "If you believe that time spent discovering what doesn't work is wasted, you misunderstand the nature of mathematical research. Every failed approach teaches us something valuable. But I'm back at square one." "Are you?" "Think carefully. What did you learn from this failure?" Priya stared out the restaurant window at the darkening autumn evening. "That the conventional topological framework isn't sufficient," she said slowly. "We need something more flexible. And that," Dr. Walsh smiled, "is not square one at all. That's valuable progress. That night, Priya began rebuilding her approach from the ground up, incorporating the lessons of her failed attempt. As November's first snow fell outside, something remarkable was forming in her mind, an entirely new way of looking at the conjecture that would soon shake the foundations of the mathematical world. The school bus rumbled along its usual route, swaying with each turn and bump in the road. Priya sat alone near the back, her forehead pressed against the cold window glass. Outside, November rain fell steadily, turning the world into a watercolor painting of grays and blurred colors. She hadn't wanted to come to school today. The night before had been frustrating, hours spent chasing an approach to the conjecture that ultimately led nowhere. Dr. Walsh had encouraged her to step away, to let her subconscious work on the problem. The best ideas often come when you're thinking about something else entirely, she'd said. So here Priya was, watching raindrops race down the bus window, thinking about anything but mathematics. 2 drops caught her attention. They slid separately at first, then merged into one larger drop that accelerated downward, absorbing smaller droplets in its path. Something about this pattern tugged at the edges of her mind. The way the droplets combined, creating a new entity that followed its own rules. "Wait," she whispered, her breath fogging the glass. The rain wasn't just falling randomly. Each drop followed rules: gravity, surface tension, the subtle contours of the glass. Simple rules that multiplied across thousands of droplets created complex, beautiful patterns that never repeated exactly. And suddenly she saw it. Not in equations or formal notation, but in a flash of intuition so powerful it made her gasp. The Riemann-Hodge conjecture wasn't about bridging 2 mathematical structures. It was about recognizing they were manifestations of the same underlying pattern, like raindrops following invisible paths down a window. "Are you okay?" asked Alex, a quiet boy who sometimes sat near her. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Priya blinked, returning to the physical world. "I'm fine," she said, barely managing to keep her voice steady. "Just thinking." Thinking was an understatement. Her mind was racing now, making connections at dizzying speed. The bus couldn't move fast enough. She needed paper, needed to capture this insight before it evaporated like the morning fog. The rest of the school day passed in an agonizing blur. Teachers called on her. Students bumped past her in hallways, but Priya existed somewhere else entirely. In her mind, she was building a bridge between topology and number theory using tools that hadn't been connected before. During lunch, she filled 7 pages of her notebook with hasty scribbles, ignoring her untouched food. By the time the final bell rang, she had the skeleton of something revolutionary. Not a complete solution, far from it, but a pathway that no one had seen before. She burst through her front door at 3:42 p.m., startling her mother who had just returned from her nursing shift. "I need to work," Priya said breathlessly, already heading toward the dining room that had become her research space. "I think I've found something important." Her mother opened her mouth to respond, but Priya had already disappeared into her mathematical sanctuary. With a small sigh and knowing smile, she prepared a sandwich and glass of milk, placing them silently beside her daughter 20 minutes later. Priya nodded without looking up, her hand moving across paper with feverish intensity. As darkness fell outside, equations filled whiteboard after whiteboard. Priya moved between them like a conductor before an orchestra, adding a symbol here, connecting ideas there. When her father returned from work at 7:30, he found her still lost in calculation. "Should we be worried?" he whispered to his wife in the kitchen. "I don't think so," she replied, watching their daughter through the doorway. "I've never seen her this alive." At 9:15 p.m., Priya finally called Dr. Walsh. The professor answered on the second ring, her face appearing on the video call with reading glasses perched on her nose. "I think I've found a new approach," Priya said without preamble. "It came to me on the bus this morning watching raindrops on the window." Dr. Walsh raised an eyebrow. "Show me." For the next 2 hours, Priya walked her mentor through her insight. She explained how she'd realized that both sides of the conjecture could be viewed as different projections of a higher dimensional structure, one that had properties of both, but followed simpler, more elegant rules. It's like, if you shine light through a complex object, the shadow might look completely different depending on which angle the light comes from, but it's still the same object creating both shadows. As she spoke, Dr. Walsh's expression changed from polite interest to focused attention, and finally to something Priya had never seen on her face before: wonder. This is... The professor removed her glasses slowly. Remarkable, genuinely remarkable. You think it could work? I think it's the most promising approach I've seen in 30 years of studying this problem. Dr. Walsh leaned closer to the camera. But proving it formally will be an enormous challenge. The mathematics required doesn't fully exist yet. You'll have to develop it as you go. Priya nodded, undaunted. I'll start tonight. No, Dr. Walsh said firmly. You'll sleep tonight. Your brain needs rest to consolidate this breakthrough. The work will be waiting in the morning. Despite her mentor's advice, Priya slept little that night. Her mind buzzed with possibilities, with pathways opening before her like the branching patterns of lightning. She dreamed of equations that wrote themselves across the night sky. The next day was Saturday, and Priya was at her whiteboard by 6 a.m. Her parents, accustomed to her unusual schedule, found her already deep in work when they came downstairs for coffee. She's been like this for hours, her mother whispered. Should we make her take a break? Her father observed their daughter's focused expression, the light in her eyes. Let her work, he said softly. This is what joy looks like for her. The weekend passed in a mathematical fever. By Sunday evening, Priya had filled 27 pages with calculations and developed the beginnings of a formal proof structure. Monday morning brought the unwelcome intrusion of school, but she negotiated with her parents to stay home. This is more important, she insisted, something she had never said about anything before. Her mother called the school, reporting she was sick, while her father looked on with a mixture of concern and pride. 3 days, he told Priya firmly. Then you go back, even if just for a few hours each day. Deal? She agreed, already turning back to her work. Those 3 days became the most intense intellectual experience of Priya's young life. She ate only when food was placed directly beside her, slept in short bursts when exhaustion overcame excitement, and spoke primarily in mathematical terms that her parents couldn't begin to understand. Dr. Walsh visited in person on the second day, canceling her university obligations to witness what was happening in the modest dining room of a suburban home. She brought reference texts, checked calculations, and occasionally asked pointed questions that helped Priya refine her approach. What you're doing, Dr. Walsh told her as they worked side by side, is creating a new mathematical language. The existing terminology doesn't have words for the concepts you're describing. Priya looked up, chalk dust smudged across her cheek. Is that allowed? The older woman laughed, a sound of genuine delight. Mathematics isn't about permission, my dear. It's about truth. If your approach reveals truth, the world will learn your language. By the end of the third day, Priya had constructed the foundation of a proof that connected the abstract realms of topology and number theory in a way no one had previously conceived. It wasn't complete. There were still gaps, sections that required deeper development, but the pathway was clear. I think it's time to write this up formally, Dr. Walsh said as evening fell. Even in its incomplete state, this approach is revolutionary. Priya's return to school the following week was surreal. She moved through hallways that felt like a movie set, two-dimensional and strangely artificial compared to the mathematical universe she'd been exploring. Friends asked where she'd been, teachers requested missing assignments, but these concerns seemed trivial now. In the evenings and every free moment, she worked with Dr. Walsh on formalizing her approach into a proper academic paper. This process was almost as challenging as the mathematical work itself. Learning to express complex ideas clearly, to anticipate and address potential objections, to place her work in the context of previous attempts at the conjecture. Will anyone take me seriously? She asked one evening, looking up from her laptop where the draft paper was taking shape. I'm just a high school student. Dr. Walsh considered the question carefully. Some won't, she admitted. Academia can be hierarchical and dismissive of outsiders, but mathematics has a beautiful quality that many other fields lack. Ultimately, it's about proof, not credentials. If your work is sound, it will eventually be recognized, regardless of who you are. The paper took shape over the next 3 weeks. Titled A Unified Topological Approach to the Riemann-Hodge Conjecture, it outlined Priya's breakthrough insight and the mathematical framework she'd developed to express it. Dr. Walsh's name appeared as second author, She had insisted that Priya take the lead position. Despite the academic weight, the professor's reputation would have added, "This is your insight." "Your work," she said firmly when Priya protested. "I've been a guide, nothing more." On a snowy December evening, with her parents watching nervously from the doorway, Priya clicked Submit on the online portal of the Journal of Advanced Mathematical Theory, one of the most prestigious publications in the field. Her father opened a bottle of sparkling cider to celebrate, though he admitted he didn't fully understand what they were celebrating. "You've worked harder than anyone I've ever known," he said, raising his glass to his daughter. "Whatever happens next, we're incredibly proud." Priya smiled, exhaustion and excitement warring within her. The paper's submission didn't mean the work was finished. Far from it. There were still gaps to fill, details to refine. But she had placed her stake in the mathematical ground, claimed her approach to a problem that had defied solution for nearly 4 decades. The waiting began. Peer review for such a significant claim would take time, especially given the revolutionary nature of the approach and the unknown status of the author. Dr. Walsh warned her to expect months of silence, possibly followed by requests for revision or clarification. The mathematical world moves slowly, she cautioned. Don't expect immediate reactions. Dr. Walsh was wrong. The reaction came just 2 weeks later, and it was anything but slow. The editor-in-chief of the journal, Dr. Harriet Chen, called Dr. Walsh directly after giving the paper a preliminary review. The conversation lasted over an hour. When Dr. Walsh finally called Priya that evening, her voice was tight with controlled excitement. "They're fast-tracking the review process," she said without preamble. "Dr. Chen has assigned it to 3 independent reviewers, including Thomas Weisskopf himself." Priya felt her heart skip. The Thomas Weisskopf? The one who said the problem was unsolvable? The very same. He apparently canceled a lecture in Vienna to review your paper immediately. Dr. Walsh paused. "This is unprecedented, Priya. They're treating this like a major event." 2 days later, the first email arrived from one of the reviewers, Dr. Sofia Rodriguez from Princeton. It contained a list of probing questions about specific sections of the proof and a request for clarification on the novel mathematical structures Priya had developed. Priya spent the entire weekend crafting detailed responses, explaining her reasoning and providing additional support for her most controversial claims. Dr. Walsh reviewed her answers, occasionally suggesting more precise language or additional references, but largely letting Priya speak for herself. "Your intuition about these structures is stronger than mine," the professor admitted. "I'm learning your mathematical language along with everyone else." Similar communications arrived from the other reviewers over the following week. The questions were challenging but fair, focused on understanding rather than discrediting. Even Weisskopf, known for his blistering critiques of flawed proofs, approached Priya's work with respectful thoroughness. As January turned to February, the mathematical community began to buzz with rumors. Something significant was happening around the Riemann-Hodge conjecture. Senior mathematicians who served on the journal's review board weren't discussing details. Confidentiality was sacrosanct in the peer review process, but their excitement was palpable at conferences and in university hallways. Through it all, Priya continued her normal life, attending classes, completing assignments, occasionally eating lunch with the few classmates who didn't find her too strange. Only her family and Dr. Walsh knew that she might be on the verge of mathematical history. Then, on a bright but frigid February morning, the email arrived that would change everything. "The paper has been accepted," she told her parents, her voice shaking slightly as she read from her phone at the breakfast table, with minor revisions. "They want to publish it in the April issue." Her mother dropped a spatula. Her father's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. "Is that good?" her mother asked hesitantly. Dr. Walsh, who Priya had immediately called on speakerphone, answered for her. "It's beyond good. It's extraordinary. Papers on this level typically take 6 months to a year for review, with multiple rounds of major revisions. This acceptance speed is unheard of." As Priya made the requested minor revisions that weekend, she had no way of knowing that her life was about to change completely. The quiet, focused existence she had known was drawing to a close. Soon her name would be spoken in university hallways around the world. Her approach would be taught in graduate seminars, and her insight would open doors in fields from cryptography to quantum physics. But in that moment, completing her revisions at the dining room table with winter sunlight streaming through the windows. She felt only the pure satisfaction of having followed a beautiful idea to its conclusion. The raindrops on the bus window had led her to mathematical truth, and for now, that was enough. The April issue of the Journal of Advanced Mathematical Theory wasn't usually an event that registered beyond academic circles. Published quarterly, it typically circulated among university mathematics departments, research institutions, and a small number of dedicated subscribers. Its articles, while representing the cutting edge of mathematical thought, were written in language so specialized that even many mathematicians in different subfields struggled to understand them. But the April 2023 issue was different. Word had spread through the mathematical community that something extraordinary was coming. A potential solution to the Riemann-Hodge conjecture, one of the field's most notorious unsolved problems. More surprisingly, rumors suggested the solution came from an unknown teenager working outside the traditional academic system. When the journal appeared online at midnight on April 1st, traffic to the website was so heavy that the servers temporarily crashed. Mathematics professors and graduate students around the world stayed up late, refreshing their browsers, waiting to be among the first to read what might be a historic paper. At 12:17 a.m., the servers came back online, and A Unified Topological Approach to the Riemann-Hodge Conjecture by Priya Patel and Dr. Eleanor Walsh became available to the world. Priya herself was asleep when the paper published. She had school the next day, and despite the momentous occasion, her parents had insisted on maintaining normal routines. "Fame can wait until after breakfast," her father had said with gentle firmness. By the time she woke at 6:30 a.m., mathematical forums were already buzzing with discussion. Senior professors were posting initial reactions. Graduate students were working through the proof steps in real-time collaborative documents, and theoretical physicists were speculating about applications Dr. Walsh called while Priya was eating breakfast. "It's happening," the professor said, a rare excitement in her voice. "The response is overwhelming. Thomas Weisskopf just posted that he believes your approach is fundamentally sound and potentially revolutionary. Coming from him, that's like receiving a blessing from the Pope." Priya felt a strange mix of emotions, pride, certainly, but also a disconnected sensation, as if this was happening to someone else. "Should I still go to school today?" There was a pause on the line. "That depends," Dr. Walsh said carefully. "Word is spreading fast. By this afternoon, people may know who you are." Her parents, listening to the call on speakerphone, exchanged glances. "One normal day," her mother said firmly. "Let her have one more normal day before everything changes." So Priya went to school, carrying her usual backpack, wearing her usual jeans and sweater, trying to focus on ordinary classes while her phone continuously vibrated in her pocket with notification after notification. Dr. Walsh had advised her not to respond to any messages or emails until they could meet that evening to develop a strategy by lunchtime. The mathematical world was in an uproar. 3 prominent mathematicians had already published preliminary analyses confirming key aspects of Priya's approach. One compared her insight to the development of calculus. Another called it the most significant advance in pure mathematics this century. But there were skeptics too. Professor Richard Harrington from Cambridge University posted a scathing critique questioning whether a teenager could possibly possess the mathematical background to solve such a complex problem. "This smacks of academic fraud," he wrote. "I suspect the senior author has used this unknown student as a front for her own work." This accusation spread quickly through academic circles, leading others to question the paper's legitimacy. How could someone without a PhD, without years of specialized training, make a breakthrough that had eluded the field's greatest minds? Priya was oblivious to this brewing controversy as she sat in AP Physics, half listening to a lecture on electromagnetic fields. Only after school, meeting with Dr. Walsh at a quiet cafe far from campus, did she learn about the developing situation. It was bound to happen, Dr. Walsh said, showing her the online discussions on a tablet. The academic establishment doesn't easily accept outsiders, especially young ones. Some of this is genuine skepticism. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but some is pure ego. Priya scrolled through the comments, her expression darkening. "They think I cheated? Or that you're using me somehow? They don't know you," Dr. Walsh said simply. They don't know how your mind works. They can't imagine someone your age doing what you've done because they're trapped in their assumptions about what's possible. So what do? Dr. Walsh sipped her tea. We let the mathematics speak for itself. The beauty of science is that truth eventually prevails regardless of who discovers it. Already, independent mathematicians are working through your proof, finding it solid. She pointed to a message thread where Professor Sonia Kim from Seoul National University had posted a detailed verification of one of the most challenging sections of the proof. But, Dr. Walsh continued, we should also be proactive. I've arranged for you to give a presentation at the university next week. A live demonstration of your understanding will silence many critics. Priya's eyes widened. A presentation? To professors and graduate students? I've never spoken in front of academic audiences. You know this work better than anyone alive, Dr. Walsh said firmly. You just need to show them that. The following days were a crash course in academic communication. Dr. Walsh helped Priya prepare slides, anticipate questions, and practice explaining her approach in terms that would be comprehensible to mathematicians from different specialties. They worked late into each evening, with Priya still attending school during the day, though focusing on classes had become nearly impossible. Her parents watched this preparation with a mixture of pride and concern. Are you sure she's ready for this level of scrutiny? Her mother asked Dr. Walsh quietly one evening while Priya was in the other room. No, Dr. Walsh admitted. No one could be fully prepared for what's coming. But she's stronger than you might think. And the truth is on her side. The day of the presentation arrived with unseasonable warmth, as if April had decided to skip directly to June. The university lecture hall was filled beyond capacity, with people standing along the walls and sitting in the aisles. Faculty members from the mathematics department had been joined by professors from physics, computer science, and engineering. Graduate students crowded the back rows, laptops open and ready to take notes. Most surprising to Priya was the presence of 3 distinguished mathematicians who had flown in specifically for the event. Professor Kim from Seoul, Dr. Alejandro Fuentes from Barcelona, and most intimidating of all, Thomas Weisskopf himself, sitting in the front row with his famous intensity. As Priya stood at the podium, adjusting the microphone to her height, she felt a moment of pure panic. The room swam before her, faces blurring into an indistinct mass. Dr. Walsh, sitting nearby, gave her an encouraging nod. Priya took a deep breath and began. The Riemann-Hodge conjecture has been approached traditionally as a bridge-building exercise, she said, her voice initially trembling but growing steadier with each word. Mathematicians have tried to connect 2 seemingly different mathematical structures by constructing pathways between them. I propose that this approach has been fundamentally misguided. She clicked to her first slide, not an equation, but the simple image of a sphere casting 2 different shadows depending on the angle of light. What if these structures aren't separate entities needing connection, but different perspectives on the same underlying reality? For the next 50 minutes, Priya led the audience through her approach. She started with intuitive examples before diving into the technical details, occasionally writing additional equations on the whiteboard to clarify complex points. When she ventured into the most innovative aspects of her work, the new mathematical language she had developed to express relationships that existing terminology couldn't capture, the room grew so quiet that the sound of pencils on paper seemed thunderous. Throughout the presentation, she noticed Thomas Weisskopf leaning forward, eyes narrowed in concentration. Occasionally he would write something in a small notebook, but his expression revealed nothing. When she finished and opened the floor for questions, there was a moment of silence. Then hands shot up across the room. The questions began gently enough, requests for clarification on specific steps, inquiries about potential applications. Priya answered each one clearly, sometimes stepping back to the whiteboard to write out additional details. Her initial nervousness had disappeared entirely, replaced by the confidence that comes from absolute command of a subject. Then a voice cut through from the back of the room. This is all very impressive memorization, said a tall man with steel gray hair whom Priya didn't recognize. But I find it difficult to believe that you independently developed these concepts. Perhaps you could explain how you, without formal training in advanced topology, arrived at structures that have eluded professionals for decades. The room tensed. Dr. Walsh half rose from her seat, but Priya gave a small shake of her head. "I understand your skepticism," she said, meeting the man's gaze directly. "But mathematical insight doesn't always follow conventional educational pathways. I didn't approach this problem with preconceptions about what methods should work. The structures I developed arose naturally from the needs of the proof." She turned to the whiteboard and rapidly wrote a series of equations. "For instance, this topological relationship wasn't something I memorized. It emerged when I realized that conventional approaches were creating unnecessary complexity. Would you like me to derive it from first principles right now?" The challenger hesitated, then nodded curtly. For the next 15 minutes, Priya worked through an impromptu derivation of one of the most complex elements of her proof. She wrote quickly but methodically, occasionally pausing to ensure the audience was following her reasoning. When she placed the final symbol and turned back to face the room, the atmosphere had shifted palpably. Thomas Weisskopf was the first to speak. "That," he said in his distinctive German accent, "was not memorization. That was mathematical thinking of the highest order." He stood slowly, commanding the room's attention with his presence alone. "I have studied this conjecture for 20 years. I have seen dozens of attempted proofs, including my own failed efforts. What we have witnessed today is not just a solution to a long-standing problem, but the emergence of a remarkable new voice in mathematics." His endorsement broke the dam of skepticism. For another hour, Priya engaged with increasingly respectful questions, diving deep into technical details with senior mathematicians who now addressed her as a peer rather than a curiosity. As the session finally concluded, she found herself surrounded by faculty and graduate students, all wanting to speak with her, to exchange contact information, to discuss potential collaborations. Dr. Walsh stood nearby, fielding questions from administrators about Priya's future academic plans that hadn't existed until that day. The steel-haired challenger approached as the crowd thinned, his expression now thoughtful rather than dismissive. "Dr. Richard Harrington," he introduced himself, confirming Priya's suspicion that this was the Cambridge professor who had publicly questioned her work. "I owe you an apology. I was wrong to doubt the authenticity of your contribution." Priya nodded, too tired for resentment. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to demonstrate it. You'll face more skeptics," he warned. "The academic world can be territorial and resistant to outsiders. But after today, you'll also have powerful allies." He glanced toward Weisskopf, who was deep in conversation with Dr. Walsh. "Myself included, if you'll accept." The presentation marked a turning point. Within days, videos of Priya's explanation had spread through the mathematical community and beyond. Popular science publications picked up the story. Teenage math prodigy solves decades-old problem, and bringing her work to a wider audience who couldn't understand the mathematics but were captivated by the human story. Priya's high school was suddenly thrust into unexpected fame. Local news vans parked outside, hoping to catch a glimpse of the math genius as she came and went. The principal, seeing an opportunity for positive publicity, organized a special assembly to recognize her achievement, an event that left Priya squirming with embarrassment as students who had barely noticed her existence now stared with curious fascination. "Just remember," her father told her that evening, "they're celebrating what you did, not who you are. Who you are hasn't changed." But in many ways, everything had changed. Universities began reaching out with scholarship offers. Not just any scholarships, but special packages designed for exceptional talents, offering freedom to pursue research without the constraints of traditional degree programs. Technology companies sent representatives to meet with her, interested in the potential applications of her mathematical framework to cryptography and data security.